Hi everyone, welcome back in another video tutorial where we're going to be creating this awesome web header design, and we're going to be learning a lot of things. So we're going to start by creating the header, and also we're going to be creating this hero area, and also we're going to be creating this featured area. But also the design is going to be responsive, just like this, and also we're going to be learning how to create this menu. So if you want to learn how to create that, stick with me till the end of this video. Welcome back. So here we are in our Visual Studio Code, of course. And as you can see here, I already created some components. So we are going to create the header. After the header, we're having the hero area and then the feature area. So for the components, make sure to create them over here. So for each component, as you can see, we're having the GS file, the component, and also we're having its own CSS since we're going to use just CSS for the styling. And also for each component, make sure to call the CSS file like this. Make sure to import it here. And we're doing the same for the header and also the same for the hero area. Next, in order to show you how those components are looking inside the DOM, inside the browser, so that's our initial view, how those components are into the browser. So in order to be able to show you that, so I use just temporarily the border to show you where those components are. And first, when we created the components were next to each other. So that's what we don't want. So in order to make each element at the top of each other, so the first thing that we need to use, of course, we need to use the display flex, as you can see here, but also we need to use the flex direction column to make them at the top of each other. And I'm just using the border to be able to see where the component or the element inside the DOM looks like. And that's a trick that I use, especially when you have a lot of complex elements inside the DOM. And that's basically it. And also make sure to go to each component here, for example, here. So we're returning this empty div and we're just using the text, for example, here, just for demonstration. And I'm using the feature area root as the name of the class name of this div. And here I'm just using this temporarily to be able to show you how they're looking into the DOM. And the same thing I did for the header first. So I did the same thing here. So I added this class name here and also for the hero area. And here inside the header component, I created three components that we're going to use. So we are having the logo, the main menu, and the login. And for each component, I created inner functional component, or basically for the header component to be able to show them, I created three inner functional components like this. And as you can see, that's the advantage of React. So the code is organized and dissociated, and it's not going to be like if we put those elements inside the root container, which is the header area root. So just for the purpose, for the sake of showing you how it is looking so far, so I added those texts here. So let's go over the header CSS and here the styling, the initial styling, just for now, just to show you how they are looking here. So here I'm going to use the same CSS file for the header to be able to style them. And so the interesting thing here to be able to show them like this. So the first thing that I did, I used the display flex. Then I used the justify content space between to be able to show them like this and have this equal space between each element. And I added some padding here, 17 pixel. So it's going to be changed depending on our needs and how the design is looking. So this is how the header is looking so far. So it's not the final result. We're going to do a lot of improvements as we move on, depending on how the design is looking. And let's start with the logo. So I'm going to go over the header component. So we are in our logo component here. And here I added two elements here. I added the logo. So I'm using the font awesome icon library to be able to use this if a code icon, but also I added the div for the name of the website. So let's go over the header.css, and we're going to start with the logo root container. So eventually the first thing, so we already set the display as flex, and what I did, I added the gap between to have some gap between those the logo and the name. So I did it 16 pixel, and I used the align items and justify content as center to be able to center those items horizontally and vertically. And also for the logo, so the font size is going to be 40 pixel. And the cursor, I added the cursor as pointer, so we can have this finger like this when we are pointing over the elements here. And I'm using the font weight as 300. And for the menu, I'm going to show you how I did it. So inside the main menu component, so I'm using an array to be able to show those items. And the advantage of using the array is if we want to add another element, all we have to do, we can add it here. And in order to show all of those items, we're using the map function. So we're going to go on each item and we are going to place it inside the single menu item. So here is the variable, or here is the element of each element of the menu items array. So now let's go to the CSS file to show you how I did. So eventually the display is flex, and the justify content and align items is going to be centered, and the gap is 20 pixel. So to have this gap between those elements here. So for the single menu item, the font size is going to be 16 pixel, and the cursor is pointer as we've seen for the logo. And finally, for this login button, I'm going to show you how I did it. So let's go back to the header component. So eventually I added another element here, the div, and this is the name, the login, of course. So let's head over the CSS, and those are the styling properties for the login button. So let's move this over here and to be able to show you the login. So things right now are kind of mingled each other. So what we are going to do later on, we are going to use the media query so to make this responsive. So don't worry about how it is looking so far. So what I want to show you how we've been able to create this login button, the styling. So the padding is 10 pixel. That's the general padding. So to have the space between the border and the text. And also I add in those I'm adding those patterns for the left and the right to have extra space here. So the border eventually it's black, the font size 16 pixel, the border radius to have this radius on all those corners. The cursor is pointer to have this icon here when I hover over the button. The user selected none, so to not be able to select this text. And of course the transition to have this transition, this fade in and out transition when I hover over the button. And eventually I'm using the hover to be able to change the background color and the text when I'm hovering over the button. So eventually, as I said, it's not going to be the final result. I'm going to make some changes later on based on the general design of our page. And next in our hero area component, I created those two components here, left area and right area. And I'm going to show you how I did it here. So as we did for the header, we're going to do the same here. So we're going to create two components, left area and right area. At this time, we're just returning this text, and we are using them here inside the hero area component. And for their position, and this is what I'm doing temporarily. So of course the root area root it's going to be, or the hero area root it's going to be flex as a display. And also for each component here we are using the flex property, so we can have an equal width of each of them here. And just for the sake of showing you those texts using the text align and the height. Normally, it's going to be dynamic, meaning that we're not going to use the height depending on the elements that we're having inside each element, so we're not going to use it. And of course, the border, it's just for demonstration purposes. Next, I created those elements here inside the left area component. So we're having the subheader, we're having this text, and finally we're having this search component. So let's head back our code, and I'm gonna explain each thing that I did. So the first element that I added is this left area sub container because I don't want to work directly with the left area root div. So I created it first, then I created those elements, the left area subheader, I called it the second div, I called it left area sub description. And finally for the search container, we're having the input, and again I used the font awesome icon. And those are just variables. I'm using them here just to make this part clean because of these texts are pretty long. So that's why I did this. So let's go back to our CSS file, and I'm gonna explain, sorry, I'm gonna explain along the design to be able to understand what I just did here. So for the header, so let's start with the left area subheader. And before we start explaining that, for the left area subcontainer that I newly added, because that's where those items are in. So the display is flex, and the flex direction is going to be column to make those like aligned vertically like this. The pattern is going to be 30 pixel to have this space between them and this border, and the gap is 20 pixel to have this little space between each item. For the left area subheader, for this header, the font size is going to be 35 pixel to make it bigger like this, to make it big like this. For the font weight, it's bold. For the description, subdescription, that's their property. So the opacity is like this to have this kind of non-opaque text. And finally, for the search container, so I'm using the display is flex, the align item center to be able to center horizontally those two elements, and the gap is 20 pixel to have this space. For the search input, those are its properties. So the height is going to be 100%. The padding to have this little extra space here. The font size is 14 pixel. The border radius for those borders here, and the width is 70% to make the width like this. And the outline, it's like, for example, normally when you click on the input, we're having a border, a thick border here automatically appears. To be able to deactivate this, you can use the outline property as none, and the border is, we are going to eliminate the border as well, and the background is this. And for the search button, so we're having those properties here. Next, I added the image here at the right side. So I'm going to go back to the code, and here in the right area function, so I added this div, and inside of it I added this image tag with this image. And to make this functionable, make sure to add the image inside the public folder. And I'm going to show you the image here that I added, that I downloaded. I downloaded it from the freepik.com, and here is its owner. So let's go to the CSS to show you what I did to be able to show the image. So for the right area container, those are the properties. So I used those properties again. The object fit is cover for the image to be able to fit. And also the width and the height are those pixels. And for the width and the height of the right area image, which is the image tag, um, their properties are 100%. Next, I added those items in the featured area component. So I'm gonna explain what I created here. So the first thing is I created this feature area container that contains all those two elements, the header. So I choose the choose your level because what we are going to do here, levels, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So we're going to work on these cards. And in the feature area cards, importing, or I'm calling those level cards. This is the function. So right now, at this moment, that is empty. So let's go to the CSS file. So, so I'm gonna put this here to be able to explain alongside with the page. And the feature area root, I added the margin at the top for 40 pixel to have some space here. The padding is going to be 40 pixel to have the inner space inside the feature area root. And for the feature area container, we're doing the column as flex, the flex direction as column to be able to have those two elements at the top of each other, and the gap is 60 pixel for this space. And the feature area header, which is the header, that's the properties, and also for the level card itself. So those are just temporarily. We're going to work on that. And the feature area card says the root element that contains all of those cards. We are doing space between into the justify content to position them like this. So this is how our featured area is looking. So I added these images here. So those are AI generated images. And I'm also adding those headers here and this little text. And as you can see, we're having this little animation when I hover over each item. So let's go back to our code and I'm going to show you what I did. So as you can see here, I'm just using one level card component because we are now using the items array with these objects. So those are the information or the texts that we're going to use for each object. And also we are using here in the image, that's the name of the image. And also make sure to add these images inside the public folder of your project. So those are the images that we are going to use, the beginner, the advanced, and the intermediate. So all you have to do is to add the name dot png. So using PNG files is not the right thing to do in the web development because of their size, but just for the demonstration purpose of this project, I'm using the PNG extension. So here what we are doing, we are looping through each item and we are using the level card component to be able to render uh, each item. And we are passing those information of each item inside or by using the props. So those are the props, header, text, and image. And we get those information and we are putting them to each div here. So I'm gonna go through this body very quickly. So what we're doing here, we are creating another layer level card container, and inside of it we are having those three elements: the image and the header and the text. And let's go to the CSS. So I'm gonna go very quickly to show you what I did for this for these cards here. So let me put this like this. And let's start with the image, for example. So for the image, I'm using the height 100% and the same for the width because it is inside the level card image container. But here we are setting the width as 200 pixel and make sure to use the object fit cover to be so that the image fits nicely in the parent div. And those are the properties for the header and the text, so they are pretty simple to add. Next, I changed the background of the header and the hero area, and I'm going to show you how I did it. So the first thing that I did, I created the color in a in a variable in external file. I called it just colors, and this is the main color that we are going to use. And this is very handy because it's going to help us to use the main color across all the components. So I'm going to show you we how I did it. So I'm going to, for example, to show you how it is working. So let's say if I change the color from here, we will see that the color is going to change in all the components that we use this color. So we're using it with the header and the hero area. So that's the benefit of using this approach. So let's go back to the header. So I'm going to start with the header first. So what I did here, I imported the main color from the colors file here. So that's the path. It might change depending on the structure of the files of your project. And what we're doing here, we're using the main color inside the actual div. And this it's going to override the styling inside the CSS. And we're using the tyranny operator to be able to show the color. So, sorry, we're using the variable here, the main color here inside the background. And the color is going to be white because it was black. But by changing the color I had to make it white. So that's for the header. So let's go at the bottom and I'm going to show you how to be able to change the color when I hovering over the login because I didn't want to do it inside the CSS file. So we need, because we're not going to be able to use the main color. And one way to be able to do so, we're going to use the on mouse enter and on mouse leave event listeners. So what I'm doing here, I'm creating the his is hovered state variable. So it's going to set to false initially. So when I, for example, when I do this, it sets to true, and when I leave the button, it is false. So we're going to base on the has overt state variable to be able to change which color. So for the background, so we're using here the turn operator. So if it is true, it's going to be white, meaning we are hovering over the button. Otherwise, it's going to go back to the main color. And also I had to change the border, so I made it white, and the same here for the color. So when there is a hover, the main, it is true, the main color goes like this. When it is true, the main color of the text goes, or the color of the text goes to the main color, and when the hover or when we leave the button, so it is back to white. And for the hero area, I did the same thing. So in the hero area component. So I imported the main color and I used it here as the background color. And also I had to change the color of the text as white. So I did it from here. And next I did the same for the search button here. So I changed the color to the main color and that's it. So it was very easy to do. And as I said, it's very handy when, for example, you are creating a theme, or for example, it is mainly used in toggling to dark mode or light mode. So that's what it is used to be able to change the colors of the website. And I did the first thing for the featured area component. So we imported the main color here and I added it where I need to change the colors. So here in the choose your level, so this is what I did. So I set the color property to main color and we did the same for the header of each card. So that's our result. So let me change the color the that we've had. So let's go to the colors.js and I'm going to save the file because it wasn't saved. That's why we're having this color. So right now, that's our basic adjustment for the colors. And now we are going to make this page responsive. And one element that I did here in our code. So we're gonna head over the header component and I created this this new div and I put inside of it the main menu and the login button component. And the idea here, because I want, for example, when I shrink the window like this, I want that those elements are inside a div so I can be able to stack them at the top of each other. So the button is going to be at the bottom and those menus or these menus going to be at the top and also they are going to be stacked at the top of each other. So that's why I did this. So I'm going to go over the header CSS and I'm going to show you the adjustment that I did in terms of properties. So those are the things that I did here. And also I used the flex property 1 and the same for the main menu so that they can take the same width or they can share 50% of the width of the whole width of the window. So also I'm gonna put this on to show you how they are looking into the DOM. So I just saved the file. So this is how they are looking. So as I said, this element it's gonna be changed when, sorry, when I change the window like this. So I'm going to deactivate those colors. Next, I made the header first responsive, so we're going to work by each component, and I'm going to show you how it is working so far. Like, so let's change the width or the window, and I'm going to start shrinking it. And as we change the size or the width, so as you can see, the header also gets responsive. So we're not having elements mingled between each other. So, and when we're having this width, we're having this icon here, and we can show our menu like this. So I'm going to show you how I did it. So let's head over the CSS file. So eventually we're going to use the media query. So on the first step, when we hit this width, 940 pixel, and you can change depending on your screen and what you want. So we're using the max width property here. And the first thing that we're going to do, this class name incorporates the menu and the button. So we're setting the flex as 2 so that the menu and the button takes a large space here to the left side. Sorry. And then when we hit this with the website name, it's going to disappear. And at 770 pixel, we're going to do all of those things. So we're going to change this. So we're going to change this div that is containing those two elements so we can have them like this. But I'm going to go rapidly into the most important things here. The position is going to be absolute because we will need to move freely the whole container and make sure to put this as relatives so it can stays within it. And also one thing that I did, I changed the background color to white, the flex direction as column, so that the menu and the button are stacked at the top of each other. The width is going to be 100% so it can take the full width, and the left is 0 pixel to be at the extreme left, and the top we did 80 pixel because we want to make it under or beneath the logo. The gap is 20 pixel, and I added some radius at the left or at the left and at the left bottom and at the right bottom of the container. And of course, we're doing this shadow here. And as you can see, we're having the display none. So because it's going to be first, it's going to be non-visible, and we're going to use this open class name. It's going to be added. And in order to make this happening, we're using inside our component, we're using this is menu open state. So it's gonna change based on the click of this menu. So that's how we can create a responsive header. Next, I made the hero area responsive. So I'm gonna show you how it is looking. So when I'm changing the width of the window, so that's our final result. So I'm going to show you how I did inside the hero area.css. So we're doing the same thing. We're using the media query, and those are the properties that we are changing. So for the hero area root, which is the root element of those two, all those components. So as we know, we're having the left area and the right area. And first, the text is above the image. So in order to reverse them, we're just using the colon reverse in the flex direction. And also we are centering those texts. So we're using this. And for the search container that contains the input and the search button, we're using the justify content as center. And finally, I made the featured area responsive as well. And this is our result. So the whole website right now is, or the web header design, I should say, is ready to use and is completely responsive. So everything goes back to its initial position. And I'm going to show you what I did in the featured area. Of course, we're going to use the media query. And those are the class names that we are going to change. So the featured area cards that contains all the cards, we're going to use the flex direction as column so that they can be at the top of each other. We added a little bit of gap, and those are the properties to center them vertically and horizontally. And the level card image container, it's going to be 100% to maximize the width. And that basically it. So right now, as you can see, everything is working fine. And also for the menu, and that's a good start. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope that you learned something from it. So we've learned a lot of things in creating this web header design, especially when it comes to how to be able to position items into the DOM. And also the most important thing here, how to make it responsive, but also we learn how to create this menu, and a lot of things can be added into the website to make it more appealing. So thank you for watching again this video, and I forgot to say that if you want to check out the code of this project, you can head over the description below. There is a link there. You're gonna head over my website and you can find the whole code there.